Welcome, everyone. Tonight you're going to hear the Educator's Science of Reading Toolbox, How to Build Fluency with Text in Your Classroom. My name is Donna Heitmanik, and I am the administrator of the Facebook page, Science of Reading, What I Should Have Learned in College. There's a series going on from the National Center on Improving Literacy, and we will be hosting these each Wednesday, first Wednesday of the month. These webinars are based on articles the National Center on Improving Literacy published in the Reading League Journal as part of their Educators Toolbox series. This interactive webinar presentation will dive into the articles and provide classroom-ready resources. This webinar will discuss best practices for how to build fluency with text in your classroom. Tonight, we will have Dr. Judith Fontana, Professor Emerita from George Mason University, recently retired from Virginia Department of Education's Training and Technical Assistance Center at Mason, where she was provided an array of services related to literacy to teachers, administrators, and school divisions. And without further ado, Dr. Fontana.
Thank you, Donna. It's so nice to be here this evening. And thank you all for coming on the eve of a holiday. My goodness. So to reiterate, this session is based on ENSEL's The Educator's Science of Reading Toolbox, How to Build Fluency with Text in Your Classroom. This Educator's Toolbox provides practical ways to incorporate fluency instruction within your classroom. A link to the resources will be in the chat shortly, and throughout the webinar, links will be shared in the chat. There is a handout, and there will be a link to it later, to a share folder, which contains a page of resources. There's that word link again, as well as access to a PDF of these slides that you're going to see tonight. So I've already been introduced. I'm Judith Fontana. Probably the most important thing to tell you about myself is that I'm passionate about teaching children to read and teaching teachers what I know about reading. Years ago, I did a podcast entitled I Wasn't Always a Bluebird, that is in the highest reading group, but I had a wonderful second grade teacher, and by December, my nose was almost always in a book. I will confess to you that I did not intend to become a teacher, but some experiences led me to the profession. Since then, no matter what my official title has been, I have been a teacher of reading. Time allows us to have two learning outcomes this evening. Fluency is one of the essential components identified and defined in the National Reading Panel report. While not an end in itself, fluency is critical to comprehension. Jean Schall called it the bridge between low-level skills involved in learning to read and the high-level skills in reading to learn. We hope that as a result of tonight's session, you'll have an increased ability to use fluency instruction in your classroom, and you will have an increased awareness of the wonderful ENSEL resources for implementing evidence-based literacy practices. Fluency has been defined as a reasonably accurate reading at an appropriate rate with suitable expression that leads to accurate and deep comprehension and motivation to read more. To be fluent readers, students must master word recognition skills to the point of becoming so automatic, so fluid, that decoding no longer requires cognitive effort or conscious attention. Fluency in oral reading includes accuracy, which is reading with few errors, rate, which is the pace at which a student reads, and expression, which is reading aloud with proper intonation and phrasing. To be considered a fluent reader, all three of these components must be in place. Fluency research says that successful readers rely on the letters on the page and that they process every one. They use their knowledge of letter sounds to strategically decode words. Finally, they have a healthy sight vocabulary. And by sight vocabulary, we mean the words that are recognized automatically. Fluency issues can masquerade and be at the root of comprehension difficulties. Therefore, when there appears to be an issue with comprehension, a first step is to investigate whether or not the student is reading connected text fluently. The foundation of fluent reading is the ability to recognize and/or decode words accurately and automatically. Without this foundation, fluency will remain an issue and comprehension will be hampered. To determine if a student is reading fluently, you start by assessing how many words the student can read correctly per minute. Use text that's at their instructional level, and we'll talk a little bit about that later. If the student's words correct per minute score is below the benchmark for their grade level, you'll want to use diagnostic assessments to identify the factors that are contributing to the difficulty with fluency. Letter, sound knowledge, and phoneme awareness should be assessed to determine if the student is able to identify and manipulate the sounds in words and state the letter-sound correspondences accurately and fluently. Phonics knowledge should be assessed to determine if the student is able to identify and manipulate the sounds in words. Oh, I missed that part. Sorry about that. To be able to read individual words accurately and with fluency. If these assessments show that students are not fluent with letter-sound correspondences, phoneme awareness, or phonics, then the foundational skills have to be addressed. Systematic phonics instruction would be provided, and it would target the student's weakest skills. If, however, the diagnostic assessments show that the student is fluent with these foundational reading skills, then we want to look at fluency practice and instruction, and that's what needs to be provided. To recap, remember, if students cannot decode words accurately and automatically, they will not be able to read connected text fluently. If diagnostic assessments show that the student is fluent with the foundational reading skills, then we move to the fluency practice, and instruction in fluency should be provided. We're going to focus on recommendation 4. We are going to focus on recommendation 4 from the Institute of Education Sciences Educator Practice Guide, entitled Foundational Skills to Support Reading for Understanding in Kindergarten through 3rd grade. We need to ensure that each student reads connected text every day to support reading, accuracy, fluency, and comprehension. So think about soccer practice and swimming practice and piano practice. You need to do it every day to become fluent, right? To have it become automatic. So practice, practice, practice. This recommendation emphasizes fluency and comprehension, which go hand in hand. Remember what we've learned from the science of reading and brain science. It's not only how fast someone can read, and in fact, we want to vary the speed at which we read depending upon what we're reading. You read a comic strip probably a lot faster than you read a science book. Anyway, we need to free up the brain resources for comprehension. Okay, before I get started, I want you to take a quick look at the chart along the bottom because I will address that briefly. As students read orally, teachers may model strategies, scaffold, provide feedback, and support accurate and efficient word identification. We have to pay attention to the text. It's important that we remember each student's individual reading needs. Do they recognize enough of the words automatically for fluency? We know that our students need to have access to books that they can read independently and books that are used instructionally. If a student is only able to read 90 to 93% of the words with automaticity, the text is not appropriate. Cognitive energy will be used to decode first, and comprehension is going to take a back seat. So let's see what it feels like to read at our frustrational level. Okay, and just to insert this before we move on, I've created some text for you. Guessing that you're all good readers, I've manipulated some text that you'll only be able to read 90% of it because I've taken 10% of the words out and replaced them with blanks. But stop and consider, because at one time, 90% was considered instructional level. So I'll put up the slide with the 90% text in just a moment. I'll give you about 45 seconds to read through it. You may want to have a pencil and paper handy to take notes or try to fill in those blanks as you read. Ready? Here we go. So again, I'm going to assume that you're all pretty good readers and you've gotten through at least most of this. So I'm going to guess that the main idea would probably be pretty easy to figure out because I see the word gardens and gardeners and bushes and shrubs. So my guess is that this article probably has something to do with gardens and gardening. So I can get the gist of it at 90%. But what if I asked you a comprehension question? What if I asked you to fill in the blank? Here we go. Some gardeners shape plants into life-size. What do you think it is? So now think a minute. If you've given a student to read a passage in which they only know 90% of the words, and they ask a question, okay, a similar question like I asked you, all right, and they answered incorrectly, what would probably be our first assumption? Okay, we would probably think that that student had a comprehension problem. Okay, and that they need instructional goals on, what kind of questions are there? Those who, what, where, when, how questions, or maybe in finding the main idea. But in this case, what's really happening here? So remember, if I can't decode the words, I can't comprehend the passage. Okay, and there, by the way, is the rest of the passage with all the words. So if you did keep a list and try to figure out what went in the blanks, there you go. You can self-check. All right, well, now we're going to talk about some fluency routines. Okay, this is using decodable text. We're going to talk about decodable text, and this is an application of a phonics lesson. So decodable text means you are working with text that the student has been taught, the phonetic concepts that they're going to see in the text, and this is going to be practice. The materials you'll need would be handouts of the text that you're going to use in a format that the kids can write on because they're going to use highlighters. So they need copies, 2 to 4 paragraphs in length, and you don't have to do it all at once. You might just do 1 paragraph a day or 2 paragraphs a day. You know your students, you can see their reactions. Just just read your audience, folks. That's what teachers do. We're really good at it. So they need text and they need highlighters. Our goal is that after each paragraph has been analyzed in practice, that the student will read the whole selection with teacher feedback. But let's see how we're going to get there. First thing we do is the teacher directs the students to take a look at this paragraph and see if you can find the words that have AR in them, because we've been talking about AR says R. So go ahead and scan the paragraph. Highlight the words with the target phoneme, and I'm going to use AR. Okay, so I will give them some time to scan the passage, highlight the words. Meantime, I'm walking around the room monitoring to make sure that they're getting it, maybe pointing a few things out. And then next we would choral read the words at least twice. Finally, I would ask the children to read the paragraph out loud, and I would listen and give them feedback. Okay, so that's just one example. Now we're going to move into some others. This example that's coming up is from an instructional routine for practicing fluency, again with decodable text. As in any teaching situation, we're going to name this. Today, we're going to learn about choral reading. Okay, you explain it, you demonstrate it, you model what you're going to expect the students to do. You provide guided practice with error correction. And then you want to provide distributed practice. And by distributed practice, we mean we need to give our kids multiple opportunities to practice a skill over time. Across the week, again, we want them to get to a level of automaticity with the phonics concepts we have just taught. Okay, you can go ahead and look at what the teacher would be doing. So moving on with our decodable text fluency practice. In this sample, the bold text provides teachers with the specific language, I call it teacher talk, of the instructional routine, including how to introduce the task. You will whisper to yourself, so you'd model that for the students, okay? I'm just going to read the directions. You will read to yourself the story that we just read. Your job is to read without making any errors. I will listen to some students read while everyone continues whisper reading until I say stop. I'll show you what it looks like and sounds like to whisper read my turn. And at that point, that's exactly what I would do. I would whisper read some text to the children. Then you provide them with decodable text that they're supposed to be working with, and the children begin to whisper read. So again, picture your classroom. The children have their text and they're individually whisper reading. All right. Listen to individual students, teachers. Read and check for accuracy and fluency. If an individual student makes an error, use the correcting procedure. And I'm going to pop that up for you. Okay, the correcting procedure is this. You would point to the word on the page and say, that word is excitement. What's the word? Excitement. Great. Now, would you go back to the beginning of the sentence and read the whole sentence again with no mistake? Okay. So let's look a little further. Whoops, went too far. Let's look a little further. Some other things that you might do while the children are reading, if they pause, they're stuck on a word, you can cue them or prompt them. You might say something, that's a pretty big word. Look for some parts that you know in that word. You might even point out some known letter sounds or some spelling patterns or rhyme patterns for the student. You can encourage them to sound it out. But okay, Judith's rule is you encourage them to sound it out. But if they're really stuck, you're going to need to help them. And sometimes you just have to say the word and have them repeat it and then go back and help them with, let's decode it now. This is the word. Let's go back and decode it. You also want to prompt, does this make sense to you? You can also, again, for advanced readers, you know this part of the word, say this part. And when we get into texts that our older students are reading, remember, they're going to be working with prefixes and suffixes and multisyllabic words. So we're going to have to perhaps give them some encouragement and some assistance as they work through this. So we have a video, which I'm going to show part of to you. And there is about a 15 seconds worth of dead time before it actually gets into the video. So I'm going to ask for your patience here.
Competent
go.
readers can recognize when the text does not make sense because they have misread a word and can correct their mistake. Teach students to monitor their understanding as they read and correct word reading errors when they occur. These strategies can be integrated with word reading and fluency instruction.
All right, friends, we are going to do a lesson today when we practice making sure that when we read, it makes sense. It has to look right, but it also has to make sense. And there's a question that might help you when you're reading. You can ask yourself, did that make sense? And if the answer is no, you need to go back and try to fix it so it can make sense. Okay? We're going to do a game called Fix It to practice. So here's a sentence. And if I read this sentence, and I read, the bus stepped at the corner, does it make sense?
No.
Turn back to me. Who would like to share your thinking? Did it make sense? No?
It didn't make sense because the buses, they can't really step, and a bus really doesn't really know how to step because it's really has wheels.
Can you guys fix it? Go ahead.
The bus stopped at the corner.
Now, does it make sense?
Yes.
Great. And it also looks right, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I noticed some of you talked about the O. All right, let's try another one. On his birthday, he turned 8 years old.
Yours.
Does it make sense?
No.
Chris?
It doesn't make sense because it would have to be changed to a OU instead of an EA.
So it also doesn't look right to you. But does it make sense to say on his birthday he turned 8 years old?
No.
Why doesn't it make sense?
Because years and yours just doesn't sound the same.
Great. Can you guys fix it?
On his birthday, he turned 8 years old.
Now, does it make sense?
Yeah.
All right. So now you're going to practice this on a text that's a 3rd grade text. So it's called The Big Hike. And in this story, Tamara is so excited to go hiking with her family and her brother James. When you're reading, you're going to read in your head. But when I lean over, I'm going to start with Madison. I'm going to ask her just to read out loud so I can hear her. And then if you make a mistake, I'll ask you, does that make sense? And we'll work together to see if you can fix it. Okay? All right.
Today, Tamara was wide awake and excited. Today, the family.
All right, so we found right here, you said, Tamara was wide awake and exit. Does that make sense? All right. Can you fix it?
Yes.
All right, you want to reread and see if you fix it?
Today, Tamara was wide awake and excited.
Does that make sense? Great fixing.
Tall trees.
Okay, we're going to move on. This is I think you get the gist of how she's doing this. There we go. And thank you for your patience for the 15-minute dead time. Whoop. Did you move backwards? Sorry. All right, so moving along. Again, we want to provide practice for oral reading with feedback. There are a variety of activities that encourage children or provide opportunity for rereads and encourage them to work together. There's a list here. When you get that link to the handout at the end of the slides, you'll see that I have links to take you to learn more about any one of these. Individual oral reading with support. Sometimes teachers will have kids record their reading, and sometimes kids even like to listen to themselves if they've recorded it. Partner reading is, pretty self-explanatory. 2 students collaborate to read an assigned text. This comes to us from the Peer Assisted Learning Strategy, or PALS, from the research by Lynn and Doug Fuchs. Oral reading is just what it sounds like. A group or a class read aloud in unison. This would typically be short text and predictable text. Echo reading, another one that pretty much tells us what's happening, but let's look a little more deeply. Again, it's a rereading strategy designed to help students develop expressive fluent reading and to improve their print knowledge. Works like this. The teacher models fluent reading. So the teacher would begin by reading the entire text aloud, demonstrating fluent and expressive reading. The next step is called segmented reading. The teacher returns to the beginning and reads a short segment of text. Now, again, depending upon your students, this could be a sentence, it could be a phrase. So it's read aloud. And as the teacher reads aloud, the students are encouraged to follow along in their copy of the text, pointing their words with their finger. Next is student participation. After the teacher finishes reading the segment, the students are asked to read the same sentence immediately afterward. This is the echo part, okay? And it reinforces their understanding and their fluency. Alternated reading, again, we'll talk about that. It's similar to partner reading. And simultaneous oral reading, a little tricky, and it takes practice because this is when the student and the teacher read the same text aloud at the same time. One format of this is actually called neurological impress. Let's take a closer look at partner reading. Here are some details. You might pair a strong reader with one who's less proficient. Okay, warning here. Do not pair your best reader with your weakest reader. That's not good. You want to pair a proficient reader with a less proficient reader, but there shouldn't be too big a gap. Depending upon the text, students would maybe move paragraph by paragraph or sentence by sentence. You even may go ahead and mark the text ahead of time for them. Strong reader reads first, and the second reader rereads the passage. So you can see that they switch jobs. Well, we also need to think about the kinds of text that we're using because different texts can do different things for us. First, there's pattern text. Okay, and you see these a lot in books for younger children, and probably the exemplar is brown bear, what do you see? I see a red bird looking at me. And then, of course, it goes on, red bird, red bird. I'm sure you all know this one. Okay, and this helps children with concepts of print, moving left to right. There are picture clues, high frequency words, and so on. Rebus text. Now, I don't see this too often, but I do see it in Ranger Rick magazines. In rebus text, we get high frequency word practice. So a rebus is a little picture that's inserted into the text. So if we were looking at brown bear, and you can see my text over there, I see the picture would be brown bear. I like the picture red bird. Finally, decodable text, talked about that before. This is part of your core instructional program. This is where the students apply skills, the concepts that you just taught them in your phonics lesson. Gives them practice to internalize those sound spelling patterns into the long-term memory. And remember, we're always working toward automaticity here. And then finally, we have authentic literature text, trade books, library books. We want to have books available for our kids to read at a variety of different readability or lexile levels. Sometimes they may, a good, say, nonfiction text with good pictures, a child can learn a lot from that and even pick up some words. So all these texts are helpful and should be available to your kids in your classroom. All right, there are 4 steps to build fluency with text. And when I look at these, one thing that I find interesting is that number 1 and number 2 are directly related to instruction. Repeated readings and corrective feedback. Goal setting and graphing performance are directly related to motivation. So motivation is important. If you don't feel good about yourself, you don't feel like you're doing a good job, it's pretty hard to do it. Repeated readings. Again, read the same passage several times. Aim to reduce the time and the number of errors with each attempt. So my teacher might say, little Judith, you read this passage at 100 words per minute. I wonder if we reread it a couple times, if you could pick up your speed a little bit. Let's try it. Okay, and then it would come goal setting. Well, I'm going to try to read 105 words when I read it the 3rd time. Moving along, you always want to provide correct feedback, and you want to do it quickly because you don't want the mistakes to be repeated because you know what they'll remember. And finally, graphing performance. This is a way to sneak some math into your literacy instruction because the kind of graph you would use would be a line graph. So you can show your students how to use a simple line graph to monitor their own performance. And, self-monitoring is a huge motivator. So, before we wrap it up, just a moment to regroup and reflect on the learning outcomes. In our short time, we've touched just the tip of the iceberg. So I'm going to pop up the next slide for resources, okay, which are also on the handout, which you'll have a link to. You'll notice that Ensel's up there, Reading Rockets, Literacy Minnesota, Reading for Understanding, a variety of resources for you to access. And we also want to remind you, and this is exciting for us, okay? I want to let you know that we have launched our new targeted TA tool. Stakeholders, state, regional, local education agencies, and even individual schools, early childhood programs, and family organizations can submit requests for targeted technical assistance. That could be consultation. It might be professional development or training. It might just be meeting facilitation. So you submit your request, and a staff member will contact you to respond and discuss your request further to identify ways that we can support your needs. Okay, so I'm going to ask my posse. Do we have questions that need to be addressed at this point?
Thanks, Judith. We didn't receive any questions at this point.
Okay, oh my goodness. All right, so I guess we'll just move ahead. Again, think of those learning outcomes. Hopefully you picked up some tips on some things you might want to do with your students. But just as important is, hopefully you will access the Ensel website and the toolboxes to check out the incredible resources and just for you, waiting for you right there. Also, when you exit this webinar, you will automatically get a link to a brief evaluation form. Your feedback is important to us. It helps us, improve. And so we're going to ask you to do that. I also want to remind you that there's more to come. In
Okay.
August, the topic will be explicit vocabulary. In September, intensifying reading instruction. In October, best practices, and we're talking about English language learners. And then finally in November, learning about the role of infographics in instruction for phonemic awareness. I also want to remind you that we are available, so you can contact us through these various social media resources. So if we have no questions, I will conclude my speech here tonight. And thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, Judith, for being here and sharing your knowledge and your expertise. I want to remind everyone that this is a great mini series, free series, and mark your calendars for what's coming. And make sure you take a look at the National Center for Improving Literacy site. It is filled with resources, and you'd be missing out on some things if you didn't do that. So thanks again, Judith and the team, for being here, and see you on August 7th. Good night.